Wingspan is a very popular game, but is Wingspan a good game? In this video, we're going to find out. Wingspan is a competitive card-based engine builder for 1 to 5 players, and it'll run from about 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the player count and the experience of those players. In Wingspan, it's all about collecting birds, laying eggs, gathering food, collecting birds, laying eggs, gathering food. Well, you kind of get the idea. But is Wingspan actually fun? And will you enjoy Wingspan? Well, stick around to find out. We'll start with a gameplay overview. In Wingspan, each player has a player board, and that represents their bird sanctuary. You start with some food, some birds, and you have some choice in what this starting distribution looks like. Wingspan is played over 4 rounds. Each round consists of a series of player turns, and on your turn, you take one of your 8 action cubes and you use it to take an action on your player board. One action is playing birds, which involves playing a bird card from your hand and placing it on your player sheet. It costs food to play birds, as indicated by these symbols. Another action is gathering food. You will get to take a number of dice from the bird feeder and gain their corresponding food tokens. The third action is laying eggs. This lets you put eggs on your birds. These are worth score and can be used to trigger abilities, and they must be paid as a cost when placing birds later in the game. The fourth action is to draw bird cards. This, well, lets you take a bird card from the center spread or deck into your hand. You only get one action per turn when you place down your action cube, but here is the kicker. Your cube starts on the rightmost exposed space of whatever action you choose to take, and then it counts down towards the left of your player board. This means that if I have lots of birds in my woodland habitat, which is associated with gathering food, then I gather more food than if I had no birds in that habitat, because these spaces further to the right of the player board are more powerful. The cube then moves left space by space, activating the abilities of any birds with this brown strip, which means the bird has an activated bird power. These give me a series of extra benefits for taking this action, provided that I have the right birds in the right spot. I might get some extra food, or be able to lay an egg somewhere. Finally, my cube comes to rest at the left of my player board, and my turn is over. Each player does this turn by turn until we have exhausted all of our action cubes, and then the round ends. There is an end of round goal, which will award points to people who have met certain conditions, like having the most eggs in a wetlands habitat, and these are randomized at the start of the game. When you score an end of round goal, you mark it with one of your action cubes. So round 2 will start with only 7 actions per player. There are 4 rounds in total, and each round goes slightly faster as you have one less action cube to use each time. Once round 4 is completed, scoring occurs, and you will add up points based on secret objectives dealt at the start of the game, the total points shown on your birds, the number of eggs you have, the number of food and cards you have cached on birds on your board, and your end of round goals. And then a winner with the highest points is declared, so it is a little bit of a point salad. Now, when you explain the rules like that, it does sound a little bit bland, a little bit dry. But the magic is how it all comes together, and you can set up some pretty terrific combos by triggering ability after ability. You take one action and it precipitates into a whole lot of extra triggers that allows you to start hoarding food that you'll use later, or tapping down heaps of eggs that you'll use to get score later on. And that's where this game really shines. So that is how Wingspan plays, but how does it look? Let's have a closer look at some of the components. Wingspan is a beautiful game, with production quality that is through the roof. It's what we've come to expect from Stonemaier games. Everything they make is physically exceptional. The sheer amount of content in the box is also impressive for the price point. 170 illustrated bird cards, all unique with a linen finish, a rulebook and appendix that makes you want to wash your hands before touching them, the 5 player boards, a cardboard dice tower, aptly named the bird feeder. Then there's the eggs, the tokens, the large wooden custom dice, the bird tray to both store cards and spread them during play. The quality here is very, very high. But it's also subdued. Wingspan's component design is the mark of something that's done really, really well. But part of me does think that it is missing a little bit of pizzazz, a little bit of excitement. particularly with the bird cards, which look great in their watercolor illustrations, but they're also not doing much. There's not really anything here that makes it stand out with a unique identity like you'll find with Root or Innis. Maybe I'm just being picky because the base production value is very high, but it's something to take into account. So from now on in these videos, I think I'm going to combine the good and the bad sections into one, just so I can have a more robust discussion about how these games make me think and feel. At a base level, Wingspan is a game that plays very well. The mechanics fit together excellently and is smooth and clean. There's nothing here that sticks out as it doesn't quite fit in or it doesn't quite work. These mechanics work well. Every time you place down a bird card, you're building up your engine, and every time you do another action, you're triggering that engine, and you do feel a sense of accomplishment as it all comes together towards the end of round 4. Practically speaking, Wingspan is pretty simple to learn to play as well and to teach to others, and that's due to the fact that you only get one action cube to place each turn, and you can only do one thing, and once you do that one thing, the board will then tell you all of the further steps you need to take to resolve your action. And that's nice to have it all stepped out right in front of you for new players. You very rarely have to spend time referring to the rulebook, which is a success. Despite this, and this is the first problem I have, new players will have no idea if what they're doing is actually effective. They'll place down some bird cards, take some actions to get some food. They'll be able to have their turns and see what they do with those turns, but they won't necessarily know if that's going to help them get enough points to win or to set up themselves in a good position for later turns. This is because Wingspan is also pretty unforgiving, in the sense that once you put down a bird card, it's almost impossible to remove or move that bird card unless it's got a very special ability. And this means that if you put a bird card down which maybe doesn't have a very good action, it's stuck there. And then that's something that doesn't give you value each time you trigger that row on your player board. This is why I think Wingspan is sometimes misrepresented when people say that it's a gateway game. Sure, it's not overly heavy. It doesn't have a ridiculous amount of things you can do on each turn. It's simple, you place the cube and then you count it down. And the theme is really accessible. It's about birds and nature, and lots of people can relate to that perhaps aren't interested in some of the wider range of board games out there. But in reality, these new players will have a very limited grasp on why their actions matter, and that means that they could get halfway through the game, realize that their engine is not working anywhere near as well as other people's engines, and it can become a little bit disheartening. But I wouldn't let my opinion stand for too much on its own, so to test the efficacy of Wingspan as a gateway board game, I brought in some new players, people that hadn't really moved past Monopoly and Scrabble, and I got them to sit down and play a game of Wingspan. This is what they said. A logistical nightmare for newbies, with so many moving parts that it is near impossible to stay across all at once, but also extremely aesthetically pleasing and mildly addictive. Or, a humbling experience. Began round 1 feeling like a wedge-tailed eagle, ready to crush bones with my talons and soar above my habitat, but then went out like a Peking duck on overcooked rice. So it would seem to confirm that perhaps Wingspan isn't the greatest way to take someone from simple board games into something more complicated. But despite this, I know that the theme really has drawn in a lot of people into the hobby, and that's a great thing by itself. But the pillar that it's placed upon as this wonderful gateway game, I don't think it quite meets the criteria there. So let's forget about the gateway stuff. Let's say you're an experienced board gamer that wants to play Wingspan with other people that like meaty board games. Will Wingspan hold your attention? Well, probably, because there is a lot of depth here. And it comes into the variety of the engine that you build. There's 170 bird cards. Each of them are unique. Each one has a different abilities or set of functions with how many eggs can be put on them, what they can do, how much they cost. And this means that your engine will be different every single time. And you can build something based on the information you have at hand. What cards you start with, what cards are on the table, and construct something unique to that game, unique to your position. And as you do this, you'll find that your sequence of actions is really, really important. The order in which you take actions turn after turn will define your ability to maximize the efficiency of your engine And that's essentially what Wingspan's about, maximizing the efficiency of each turn so that you can get ahead in terms of resource production and then convert that into points before the end of the game. One element that I really like about Wingspan is how it escalates. It starts off really simple. You place one cube and do one thing. But the more birds you have on your board, the more things you'll do each turn, the more resources you get, but at the same time, each subsequent round you have less and less actions, so it feels like the whole game is starting from this wide free base to this really pointed end game where it's critical that you make the right moves at the end or all of your hard work could be overtaken by the player to your left. The other thing that I feel detracts a little bit from Wingspan is the scoring system, something we call point salad. Now, point salad is where you have a whole bunch of different things that give you points and you add them all up at the end of the game to see who has the highest points and that person wins. Now, yeah, point salad is probably the fairest way to score a game like this, and it means there's many different avenues and strategies you can use to get ahead, and they're all weighted and you get benefits from those at the end of the game. But it also feels quite anticlimactic because you don't know where you stand compared to your opponents until the game's over, and then you add up the points and see who wins. It's not like there's this final climax, this exciting peak of the game where it comes down to the wire. You have your last action and you think, well, I hope that was enough. Let's add everything up and do some maths. And I know a lot of games finish like this. A lot of really good games finish like this. But it's personally something that I think is a little bit of a detractor from an otherwise really nice set of mechanics. Now, I don't really have a suggestion on how this could be improved. I'm not a game designer, not my job, but it's something that is worth taking into consideration. The other thing is that there's a lack of a pivot. So because you kind of plod out your engine card by card, action cube by action cube, if you get halfway through round 3 and you see that other people's engines are working much better than yours and they're getting more resources and points faster, well, there's nothing you can do to really change up your strategy to counter that at that stage. You're pretty much locked in, and it's not the best feeling to be in that situation in the end game. Now, I know this review probably feels overly negative, and I don't mean to say that Wingspan is a poor game or even a mediocre game. Wingspan is actually a really good game, but there's so much stuff out there on the internet that's going to tell you how great Wingspan is. So I think it's valuable to bring a bit of the other side in and talk about that at the table. And for me, it's the lack of pizzazz. Wingspan is beautiful. Wingspan works well. Wingspan is solid, but it doesn't have that peak of excitement. It doesn't have that something really special that pulls you in and goes, ooh, I see how that works. That's the twist. That's cool. And I think it's missing out on that. But that's just my opinion. My partner, on the other hand, loves Wingspan and always likes it to come out onto the table. So let's hear a bit about what she thinks.
Well, there's a few things that I love about this game. First of all, it was designed and illustrated by women. It's a really nice design, really nice to look at. And it's also educational. This game has over 170 bird cards printed in high quality paper. It has cute, colorful eggs. It has food tokens, and it has a dice tower which looks like a bird feeder. But what I love the most about this game is that you can always learn a fact about a bird, because each card has information on the characteristics and features of each bird, which in theory, it actually represents how each bird behaves in real life. I love Wingspan because it's a fun game to play with other people. It's not a long game and it's always entertaining. So if you love birds, this is the game for you.
Wingspan is a good game. Look, it's probably even a great game. But if you like player interaction, you like a little bit more excitement, you like a little bit more conflict, it might not be the game for you. So just keep that in mind. It's probably the game for everyone else in your family and half of your friends, because a lot of people tend to really like Wingspan, and I don't think I've ever brought it to the table and been disappointed. I just don't feel a drive to keep bringing it back to the table game after game. So that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to catch us here next week at Turning the Table by hitting that subscribe button to make sure you stay up to date. Again, thanks for sticking around and watching the video.